Derek Chauvin was just sentenced to 22.5 years for the murder of George Floyd. Prosecutors had asked that Chauvin receive 30 years in prison, and his lawyer had sought probation in this terrible miscarriage of justice. Hello everyone, this is Mr. Obvious, and today on the internet we've got a lot to talk about. Many of you out there are probably feeling the heat, trying to stay cool, melting practically, but we've got stories to talk about, folks. Many of you have probably heard of the building that collapsed in Miami, with 159 people still unaccounted for. The current death toll is around 4, and I believe is rising. And in other news, Kamala Harris finally visits the US border, but then blames Trump for everything. Hilarious, considering she also lied and said that she had visited the border many times before. But we're gonna talk about all that and more. Before we do, smash that like button, subscribe, hit the notification icon for updates for future content, and if you like the work that I do, please share the video with a friend. And now a quick word from our sponsor. Introducing Virtue Signal, the card game. Virtue Signal is a card game parody of social justice activism. In Virtue Signal, you play as one of 12 different social justice warriors, trying to get NPCs to win the game, including cards such as Wax My Balls, Bigot. The game is available for $29.98. and even features yours truly, Mr. Obvious, in one of the expansion packs. But you can get it all for only $54.98. The whole game and 410 cards. Get yours today by clicking on the link down below. And we're back. Let's jump right into it. There's a lot of controversy surrounding Derek Chauvin and this case, and I can confidently say that I believe that he's being wrongly imprisoned, that his trial was a mistrial, and that he should not be going to prison. In my opinion, he's a political prisoner. Let me tell you why. During the trial, the prosecution had no case. They basically brought up people who made emotional arguments without any of the evidence being considered. For example, one of the biggest pieces of evidence that the court and that the judge said couldn't be used as evidence, in a previous arrest, George Floyd swallowed a packet of drugs, ended up overdosing. The police recognized the overdose, brought him to the emergency room, and he survived because he had his stomach pumped. Now, there are many people who believe, with significantly strong evidence, including a lethal amount of fentanyl found in his blood, that Floyd may have done something similar in the Chauvin arrest. However, this time, cops did not recognize any overdose, and that may have led and contributed to his passing away. Personally, I don't think Chauvin did anything outside of the bounds of the law. The hold that he had on Floyd was legal. They weren't even trying to hold him. They were trying to get him in the car. Floyd jumped out of the car. They never meant, and this is very important because intent matters. Chauvin never meant to hurt Floyd. He didn't hit him. He wasn't rough with him. All he did was hold him down. And this is compounded by the fact that Floyd was the one who jumped out of the vehicle in the first place. So let's read. Derek Chauvin, the former Minneapolis police officer convicted of murder in the death of George Floyd, was sentenced Friday to 22.5 years in prison, closing a chapter on a case that sparked global outrage and protests. He was granted credit for time served. Hennepin County District Judge Peter Cahill said the sentence was not based on public opinion, emotion, or sympathy. He was not trying to send any messages. This is a lie. Yeah, that is complete and utter baloney. This wasn't entirely a mistrial. The prosecution did several things during the case that literally are a cause for a mistrial. And Chauvin's lawyer isn't helping. He didn't help. He should have filed for a mistrial. He should have brought it to the higher courts. This is an absolute miscarriage of justice. It is an embarrassment. Chauvin, I believe, Chauvin is being imprisoned and punished because he's a white police officer and he was at the wrong place at the wrong time. When you have lethal levels of fentanyl in your blood, most likely you are not making it. You were not making it through the day. And consider that Floyd had heart problems. He had a history of substance abuse. I bet Chauvin regrets doing his job. I really do. And I'm going to show you why the judge is biased and honestly should be disbarred. Here it says, "This is based on your abuse of a position of trust and authority, and also the particular cruelty shown to George Floyd," he told Chauvin. The judge said he also wanted to quote, acknowledge the deep and tremendous pain that all the families are feeling, especially the Floyd family. Oh God, okay, so the judge is clearly biased, and he clearly wanted to punish Chauvin. How did Chauvin treat Floyd cruelly? He tried to get him in the vehicle, he told him to calm down, he didn't actually do anything to him except hold him down. Pictures show that his knee was not always on his neck, sometimes it was on his back. This is ridiculous. Most people who talk about this case do not actually know the details of the case. They haven't read the autopsy. They haven't seen the footage, the full footage. But this is where we're at now. If you're a white police officer, you are not allowed to do your job. I want to show you this insane tweet that I found. Here we have a Twitter user named L, who shows a tweet from Portland police. She says, quote, please don't burn down buildings. We shot a white guy, LOL. Referring to the police department statements, they say, there is an erroneous information being circulated on social media regarding the officer involved shooting in the Lloyd district. We can confirm that the subject involved is an adult white male. No one else was injured. We shot a white guy. You don't have to burn down the city. Absolutely, wow. Is this how far that we've fallen as a society? That the police are now saying, don't worry, we shot a white guy. You don't have to riot. Implying that if they had shot an African-American guy, that you would have to riot. This is the clown world, right? This is the absolute lunacy of the world we're living in. So that's that, folks. I'm going to read you some comments by the public, just so that you know that I'm not the only person who questions the results of this trial. North from St. Paul says, trial by media. Had this not been a media trial, would have been 10 years if found guilty by the jury. Be careful if you are choosing public safety for employment. Basically, don't be a police officer. Montalbanac, London says, excessive sentence. Some of these are a little bit spicy. I'm not sure that I can read them on air, but people bring up the fact that Floyd is being treated like a saint, despite the fact that he was not a model citizen. We'll leave it at that. This brings us to other news. People are shocked after a building in Miami completely collapsed. I'll show you footage here. Shockingly, you can see the building collapse like a house of cards. Nobody knows why. However, more than 100 people are missing, and the death toll keeps rising. 30 occupants were rescued. This is really shocking. It's not every day that you see an entire building collapse. However, I have a news update that may explain why this building collapsed. Here we are in the Daily Mail. Exclusive. Engineer who surveyed Champlain Towers for 6 months wasn't allowed to look at its foundations. Condo board lawyer reveals. As first survivor files a $5 million lawsuit over the building collapse. If I was one of these people, I would sue this place to the ground, okay? So according to an engineer, no one was allowed to look at the foundations, implying that the building collapsed because the foundations were compromised, and whoever owned the building, through intent to be negligent, allowed the foundations to erode to the point that the entire building came crashing down. This is absolutely insane. Probably one of the biggest scandals in American real estate history. So here the story says on the Daily Mail, the engineer who studied Champlain Towers for 6 months before recommending changes for recertification did not study its foundation to look beneath the building. A lawyer for the Condo Board Association told the Daily Mail. Now, this brings up a few questions in my opinion. For example, if you didn't do your job and look at the foundations, whether you were allowed to or not, isn't that negligence as well? Shouldn't you be to blame for not doing your job properly? Kind of sounds like you were negligent. Just saying. They go on to say that, quote, it is not standard operating procedure to include excavating under the foundation. Donna Berger, an attorney for the condo board, told thedailymail.com on Friday. What most people seem to think, or at least what engineers are saying, is that this was some sort of subsurface failure. Regardless, there are many victims, and this will be a traumatic event for many, many families. Our last story of the day is Kamala Harris. Oh, that Kamala. Finally visiting the border because Trump said he would go to the border, but we can't have that. So Kamala finally goes to the border and then blames Trump for everything. Classic Kamala Harris, classic Biden administration. Here in the Daily Mail, Kamala snaps at reporter, blames Trump, faces down protesters, and is slammed for landing 800 miles away from the real crisis during her first trip to the border as VP, 93 days after she was named immigration czar. A lot of people are roasting Kamala Harris and calling her out because she was literally appointed by Biden to take care of the border crisis, and she has not done jack squat. She wouldn't even be at the border if Trump hadn't announced that he was going to visit the border first. Honestly, a perfect example of who she is as a politician and as a person, and a perfect example of the Biden administration. They create all these problems, they ignore them, they blame Trump. Classic Democrats. So don't get me wrong, I'm a libertarian, but left-wingers are angry too. But that's merely the obvious. Well, that's all for now, folks. What do you think about this story? Let me know by commenting down below in the description. So much crazy things happening today, folks. How is it affecting you? What is your plan to survive the coming days? Personally, I'm really worried. I'm really worried for the future of this country. But let me know what you think. As always, support the channel by joining me on Patreon or Subscribestar. This channel is currently not monetized and relies on viewers like you to survive and thrive. Joining gives you access to a private Discord server. It's basically members only, so if you want to enjoy that, join me on Patreon or Subscribestar. If you want to donate, links are down below. Anyhow, thanks for watching. This has been Mr. Obvious, and I'll see you all next time.